And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. As usual, it's me, Jake, and today we're talking about Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. We've been playing a review copy on PS4 for quite some time now. This is quite the game, super ambitious, but I was skeptical. The Insane Trilogy remake was absolutely awesome, yeah, but that was rebuilding an original great thing. It was also Vicarious Visions. Now this game is being made by a completely different team, Toys for Bob, and those developers here, they're making their own new Crash game in 2020 from the ground up. Now, I'm an older fan, I grew up with the original Naughty Dog games and then kinda completely lost interest once the PS2 released and Activision took over the games. I knew a lot of folks loved those games, but I was off the train at that point. But I also felt those same feelings again when this game was first announced. However, it's lots of fun. It's a great new generation of Crash that has all the goofiness, the challenge, and the gameplay chops you'd expect, with some fun surprises thrown in and a push towards more replayability. So, diving in, the most interesting thing about this game is that it's technically a sequel to Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped for the original PlayStation, which for many was the high point of the series. It was Naughty Dog's last mainline entry, not counting the spin-off stuff, and it pushed the series forward in new and interesting ways. So, they've dropped all the later stuff here, the Mind Over Mutant stuff and all that, and this game is technically just Crash 4. I'm sorry, I just can't get over how crazy it is that they did this. And most importantly, it works. It works, but it also feels distinctly new and different. The art style is slightly different, the color palette is different, some characters look a tiny bit different, but thankfully, they didn't mess with Crash too much, at least, and I'm glad because he's looked weird in the past sometimes. But the gameplay is 100% traditional Crash with new stuff and variations thrown in that don't completely distract from the main thing you're doing. Running, jumping, spinning, and smashing crates, of course. So picking up right after the events of Crash 3, dimensions are ripped open as the bad guys return, and it's up to Crash, Aku Aku, and his sister Coco to save the world and reunite other powerful mystical masks along the way. Now, when you dive in, you choose between the regular mode and the retro mode. Retro mode gives you the traditional live system, so I played through with that. I like the added stress of inevitable defeat while all my lives trickle away. Also, even if you choose this tougher retro mode, the game defaults on a sort of shadow indicator circle. It's kind of like a cursor that helps you predict where your character is going to land. Its inclusion makes sense if you've ever played a really challenging Crash level. This is probably useful, but some classic players might also find it a bit odd. You can turn it off in the options menu, although I didn't realize that until pretty far into the game, so you'll probably see it pop up quite a bit here and there in the gameplay, in this footage. Now, you progress through levels linearly, just like you'd expect, and after every level, there's a hub-type overworld map where you move to the next level, you replay levels, you change your skin, you switch between playing as Crash or Coco, who primarily play the same, you take on optional stuff, and the levels themselves really are the star of the show. Every single world has variation on the levels within it, and every theme brings something new and crazy. Rock and roll junkyard, mystical ancient stuff, snow, beaches, laboratories, Pirates Cove. It's all stuff you'd come to expect, but brought about in this new over-the-top level of style and graphical detail. Levels around you feel massive and like you're just a small little dude running through a part of it. Big distances, areas, and even enemies that take up the entire screen and lots of effects going on just make it feel like it's part of my favorite part of playing, experiencing these funky new levels and how creatively they challenge you, the player, someone who's been sliding and jumping and spinning for what feels like an eternity now. Thankfully, that spinning and running and jumping does feel like it should, It feels slightly different than the Insane Trilogy, but it's still just as weirdly precise and also dumb luck at the same time. That, along with discovering creative new enemy types, I think is just half the fun. They found very much a way to keep most enemies consistent with threats that make sense in the context of Crash games in terms of what you do, but making them look really cool and new in the process, like the octopus with a pirate hat swinging swords and all of his tentacles. He's one of my favorite, I'm not gonna lie. Now, the new masks, called Quantum Masks, are the most notable change-ups, but they're not super obnoxious. You know, they don't feel like gimmicks. At various points in levels, you can pick up these masks and toggle them on and off with a button through certain areas, and it changes up the gameplay. You know, there's a phase shift where you can make stuff appear in the environment and then disappear with the press of a button. There's slowing down time for a very brief few seconds. There's flipping the gravity, which really makes for some fun dizzying sequences, and being able to turn into a spinning tornado of dark energy. Now, some of them outstay their welcome a little bit, but for the most part, the scenarios for when these masks are used are designed so well. Like, really creative, and of course, most importantly, challenging. You gotta learn new tricks for Crash, and using some of this stuff kind of requires you to break your classic Crash brain a little bit. Some of it adds some challenge, and I think some people might struggle with some different things. You know, you might have problems with the perspective shifting gravity stuff. I didn't really too much, but the dark energy hurricane thing and landing those spin jumps with precision nearly killed me. So long story short, what I'm trying to say is that they do a good job of introducing themselves into the game and being real interesting, challenging elements, not just gimmicks. Good job, guys. There are also other character types you play as for certain points, and you can even jump around the map and replay certain areas from the other character's perspective in unique areas designed for them, and it's actually really fun and breaks up the action quite a bit. So there's Tawna, that's Crash's love interest from the original game, but kind of sort of from a different dimension now. Then there's Cortex himself, and Dingodile. Most importantly for me, I love him. Dingodile and Tawna are straight up just fun. You know, Tawna is more of like a badass Crash who can do wall jumps and kicks and use a grappling hook, while Dingodile is like a big chunky boy who uses his vacuum weapon for a bunch of destruction. Cortex, on the other hand, feels a little bit more puzzle style because you need to kind of use his abilities to figure out how to get around much more, because he's just kind of like a weird little guy with a big head. Now, along with the masks and these quirky characters, Crash just keeps things fresh by adding more sliding and hanging from these rails, the occasional wall run that feels surprisingly good in the future-y levels, and nice new takes on the riding on a creature or running from a big something type of thing. You know, they take these familiar elements from the original 1, 2, 3 games and remix them in fun, smart ways, and I don't really want to spoil all of them for you, but it's fun. Now, I will say, this game is very challenging. Now, you guys know, like, look, I'm not like a master completionist gamer or anything like that. I'm not going to try to pretend to be cool by claiming I can beat Ninja Gaiden with one hand or anything, but there are some sequences here that I found very surprisingly difficult. Maybe it's just me, because I suck sometimes, yeah, but before you comment, I'm not complaining here, because I think it's good difficulty. There's a difference between bad difficulty and good difficulty. It never feels like bullshit unfair or broken difficulty. It's genuine skill and requirement needed here, and I really enjoyed that they embraced that challenge and did not mess around. Banging your head against the wall and figuring this game out and letting it trick you is actually a good part of the fun, especially because the game tries to beef up replayability. You know, you can cruise through and beat the main story quest without doing anything else much, really in like 7-ish hours, depending on how good you are. And I know people are like, what, 7 hours? And I get that, but it's a platformer. You know, they've never exactly been 100-hour-long RPGs, especially the Crash games, but they try and add value here by adding more replayability, more meaningful replayability. You know, of course, there's getting all the crates and then replaying for the time attack trial thing, as we've always seen, but areas are filled with more secrets to find and collect, and the game rewards you for all of these replays with a progression type system. You try to max out the different achievement gems for each and every level in the hopes of getting cool character skins that you can then equip from the main menu. And I gotta say, as someone who's skeptical, you know, the skins are actually pretty cool and don't really piss me off as like the Crash Bandicoot purist. You gotta replay quite a bit and be really good to get even the bare minimum amount of skins for Crash and Coco. But of course, with Activision, there is the question of microtransactions after Crash Team Racing. This is where they could come in. There aren't any here in this game, but they could be added later on. You know, the team has signaled that they may not want to do that. but it's still just worth pointing out. At the time of making this video, there's no microtransactions, but there's also the flashback tape levels, which serve as kind of like a side diversion old school challenge level, like framed as these old VHS tapes when Crash was Cortex's test subject. And then, of course, there's playing through the levels with a variety of different filter modifiers that make the game look really freaking cool, but also add way more challenge. One of my other favorite things is pass and play. This is where the game kind of dictates controller passing with up to 4 players. You can pause it and switch it on at any time and play like maybe you did as a kid, passing the controller around. The game tells you to do so after you choose what the condition is. You know, maybe it's per checkpoint, per death, or both. And it's pretty sweet because someone else can come over and drop in or out at any time. It's a novel feature, totally, sure, but I really enjoy having simple stuff like this. Along with that, if you're playing with someone and you dig that stuff, you can quit out to the main menu and play Bandicoot Battle, this different mode. This is 1 to 4 players, and is basically a race to the finish line in checkpoint races or crate smashing combo modes. Basically, it's like, who's better? It's a competition. Who can smash more crates faster before dying, or, you know, who can get to the next checkpoint in the fastest time? It's turn-based, and it's a surprising amount of extra little Crash fun. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I'm happy they put little extras and fun diversions and progression throughout this game. It's a really fun adventure with cool enemies, some great boss battles, challenging sections, fun diversions, and variations of the formula. So even on its own, without the added bells and whistles, just the raw game, the levels, the jumping, it's all really fun. Straight up, I definitely recommend this one if you're a platformer and a Crash Bandicoot fan. But of course, that's a before you buy. You know how this goes by now. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinions, and now I want to hear yours down in the comments. I also want to say thanks for watching. We've been grinding out these videos and working really hard. So as the person who's been busting out most of these videos, I just want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for showing up, because we all do really appreciate it here. But again, let me know what you think about Crash. What's your favorite game in the series? I know I said some blasphemous things about the later games that some of you guys I know definitely like, but really, what's your favorite? Even if it's a later game, let's talk about anything Crash down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and maybe we helped you out, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. And of course, if you're new, consider subscribing because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.